Welcome to Talking Meds on the PrescQIPP podcast, engaging conversations about medicines-related dilemmas. I'm your host, Jonathan Underhill. Hello and welcome to the latest episode of Talking Meds. I'm your host, Jonathan Underhill. Before we start, I just wanted to take the opportunity to remind you about the annual PrescQIPP Awards, which is coming up on the 7th of October 2025 in Nottingham. Now, you've still got a chance to submit your work for this, and we've actually extended the deadline for this to the 16th of June. So you've still got a couple of weeks to submit your work. This is open to all the teams working within the NHS, and you have a chance to win a prestigious PrescQIPP award, and who wouldn't want to do that? The categories for this year are addressing health inequalities, care homes or domiciliary care medicines optimization, data tools and technology to support medicines optimization, enhanced productivity, sustainability and value for money, and last but not least, patient safety and things you've done to address overprescribing. You can find more out in the community resources section of the PrescQIPP website, and I'll put a link in the show notes for this podcast as well. Today I'm delighted to be joined by Minna Eii. Minna is an acute medicine hospital pharmacist based in the northeast of England, my home territory, if you like. She's the co-founder of an environmentally conscious pharmacy group in the UK called Pharmacy Declares. And she's the lead author of a newly launched Greener Pharmacy Toolkit from the Royal Pharmaceutical Society. So we're going to talk about sustainability challenges around medicines, something that is a topic that lots of you will be very interested in. I suspect it's on lots of your agendas within medicines teams, and indeed patients have a real sort of interest in this sort of thing as well. So I'm delighted to be joined by Minna. So Minna, just in terms of your background, where have you sort of come from in your pharmacy journey, and where are you now?
Thank you, Jonathan, for inviting me on here. Very delighted to be able to speak about a passion subject of mine. So where have I come from? So I actually didn't grow up in England. I grew up in a tropical island almost of Borneo, Brunei, a country called Brunei. So then I came for university in the northeast, where you'll be very familiar with, Jonathan. So started off as a hospital trainee pharmacist, and then moved up to be an acute medicine pharmacist in emergency care. It's always been an area I've been interested in, fast pace, and what can I do in the little time I have with my patients. I'm also a pharmacist with the Northeast Ambulance Service. We're working on NHS 111. That's been since COVID, actually. I've picked up that side hustle. I've also worked as a locum pharmacist regularly for the likes of Asda and Tesco and the independents since I've been qualified, actually. And I did a little stint during COVID in a vaccination hub. I remember those, if you remember those times. And interestingly, last year I took a year out and worked under Southeast London ICB as a sustainability fellow. We're also with NHS England's Greener NHS team. And a year before that, I moved to Cornwall. I did a full-time master's, got a Pro Vice Chancellor scholarship to do a master's in environment and human health to back up kind of what I'm saying and promoting in sustainability within pharmacy, really, which led me to kind of roles like now, where I co-wrote and managed a project for the Royal Pharmaceutical Society in the Greener Pharmacy Toolkit launch, as well as being the chair of sustainability with the Guild of Healthcare Pharmacists. So yeah, I've been around the block, and I think Gen Z will call that a portfolio career. Would you agree?
Yes, portfolio career. Interestingly, I've probably had a portfolio career as well in terms of the different experiences that I've had. I don't think it's unusual now. I think the days of people being a hospital pharmacist and just being a hospital pharmacist doesn't happen as often as it used to. I think a lot of people are like yourself, and like me, where we do lots of bits and bobs within our career, and it actually makes for a really rich experience, I think. So, what was it that made you get interested in sustainability in medicines and pharmacy then?
So I mentioned where I grew up, where I was surrounded by greens, trees, biodiversity. So protecting nature is kind of within growing up. We don't litter everywhere. That's in our nature. Growing up in the island, so you read news articles when you're young about orangutans in my backyard, where the palm oil industry is burn all the trees down, burn the home down. And I remember being very sad about that. So I've always have a love for nature. And being from the northeast, recently we had the sycamore gap tree that absolutely broke my heart. So things like that. So the connection with nature. So how to translate that professionally? So there was a call during COVID, where people kind of work from home. So from a pharmacist in Dorset called Tracy Lyons, who is my co-founder for Pharmacy Declares. So they have made a call for any pharmacy professionals interested in sustainability to please kind of chat, have a meetup to see what we could do within a profession, because we saw so much medicines waste. It's in the overprescribing report. It's in so many numerous quips that's been done within pharmacy. We're just wasting so much medicines, and overprescribing agenda is huge. So then there was a few of us that's gathered as the OGs, if you like. So the likes of Professor Angela Alexander, who's now retired. She's been calling for action, since 10 years ago when she was a lecturer. And then I met the likes of Alifia Chakera, who's a pharmacist in Lothian, who created a novel kind of nitrous oxide waste mitigation toolkit that's now replicated worldwide to reduce carbon footprint, which is really inspiring to come together with all these pharmacy professionals with special interests and be able to connect instantly with a passion subject of ours. So at the time, there was already a movement within the medical and nursing community, but there's no pharmacy representation. There's so many other pharmacy professionals, sorry, not medical professionals, talking about pharmacy. But without pharmacy involvement in terms of pharmacy operations and the governance in place, they don't really understand that. So we thought, hey, yeah, there's a place for us to talk about sustainability and medicines and pharmacy. So yeah, that's kind of how it all started. And it's like finding a tribe. I always describe it with people with shared values and a shared lingo. So if you talk about the 1.5 degree scenario, what does carbon neutral mean? What does health crisis actually mean? If you speak to a healthcare professional who understands sustainability, they understand all these new terminologies that's come out.
Yeah, I mean, I've had similar sort of experience with sort of either my own personal experience. I think the Sycamore Gap thing was really quite.
Mm.
For those of you who don't know, there was on Hadrian's Wall in the northeast of England, there is a magnificent sycamore tree that was vandalized and essentially chopped down. And I think just that impact that had on people like me who are from the northeast, and I've got a picture of Sycamore Gap on my wall in my office, for example.
Same.
That sort of thing, and that I guess that isn't necessarily an environmental impact in terms of the carbon footprint wasn't what destroyed Sycamore Gap, but it's something that is emotive and means something to us. And I think there are lots of stories like that where you see things that aren't there anymore, and whether you believe in the fact that global warming is a thing or not, there is clearly something there that's going on. The science is fairly clear on that, but just the amount of wastage that we see on our streets and in our oceans and as you say in our forests is something that I think means a lot to a lot of people. So, in terms of medicine, I read somewhere that medicines account for about 25% of the carbon emissions within the NHS. So we obviously need to do something about that. But what would you say were the key challenges for pharmacy teams on around sustainability?
Touch on a very good line earlier on there on kind of whether people actually even believe in
Mm.
global warming happening, because it's such a politically charged subject matter where you have people who are spreading misinformation, contradicting sciences just to suit their corporate needs, for example. So there's a general lack of understanding of climate science currently and what sustainable pharmacy or medicines use even means. So often people dive straight into waste recycling. But waste and recycling, I think maybe accounts for 1 to 2% of the NHS emissions. So it's really not much. You can see it, it's so visible. But overall, in the grand scheme of things, it's the usage. So if you eliminate the unnecessary use to start with, that's where we need to tackle our efforts in. So it's not about, calculating the exact CO2e of a medicine or performing hard life cycle analysis of manufacturing of medicines. There are places and people who do that, namely the pharma industry and our regulators and policymakers to green the life cycle analysis for pharmaceuticals, if you like, but it's not for your average pharmacy team. So for the average pharmacy team, members of our pharmacy declares have done surveys over time. So the most commonly described challenges are a lack of time to do this, to do their QIPPs, a lack of power. So, they don't hold the budget. They lack support from leadership team. Their leadership doesn't prioritize this. And obviously lack of finance, which is everyone at the minute, isn't it? And I'm facing these challenges myself within my organization. But you really have to be patient, and it's a slow move uphill amongst other challenges and other priorities. And people say you can't wait because, the climate emergency is here, it's an emergency. However, pick your battles. And also there's a lot of greenwashing going on as well. So there could be complacency in a system where people are saying, the paper medicines pot has laced with plastic anyway. What's the point of getting rid of what we currently do now using the plastic medicines pot? So that's kind of dismissing an effort just because of a minimal evidence-based information available there. They don't want to do it, and they're trying to discredit someone's effort to try and do something. So yeah, the reluctance, the misinformation, I think currently are key challenges for pharmacy teams in this agenda.
Yeah, and I guess there's that sense of what can I do? It's like the Michael Jackson song, looking at the man in the mirror. It starts with the individual, doesn't it?
Yeah.
And I think that brings us nicely on to the Greener Pharmacy Toolkit. Because what this does, and you can talk about it, Minna, because you led the project, but when I looked at this, what this does, it gives something achievable for individuals, doesn't it? Within the toolkit. So if you're struggling to think, right, what can I do? I would suggest have a look at the Greener Pharmacy Toolkit and just have a go at that. So tell us about the Greener Pharmacy Toolkit then, please, Mina.
Absolutely. So this has been my project for the last 2.5 years. It's a project commissioned by NHS England Medicines Net Zero team. So it's a call from pharmacy professionals, really. A few years ago, there was no guide, no checklist. Everyone says, what can I do? What can I do? I don't know what to do. So this isn't some external consultancy commissioned project. So there's a lot of consultancies currently trying to reduce organization carbon footprint. This is a toolkit created by pharmacy professionals who work every day front line still and understand the pressures facing our currently pharmacy staff. And it's a reframe of what pharmacy staff already currently do. It's not an add-on. It's not an additional task we're asking people to do. It's looking at what good looks like. So we're kind of being bogged down with business operating targets, pressures, and we've forgotten what it is to provide a person-centered care, if you like. So initially, when I first wrote this in the first draft, it's almost like a 30 pages of rant of everyday workplace, my frustrations. It's a very angry first draft. So some of the examples I'll lay out in my first draft that's never made it to the final piece, obviously, is I hear GPs and patients saying to me, Minna, so I try to return medicines back to my local pharmacy, but they've said that I can't do that because the medicines were not dispensed by them in the first place. It is in the NHS pharmaceutical and local pharmacy regulations that, we have to accept and dispose of unwanted drugs presented to NHS pharmacists, with the exception that if you do not have NHS commissioning board arrangements in place for the collection disposal of drugs, that is the only reason where you cannot accept medicines waste. So that was one example of frustration. So in the guide there'll be a reminder that as per governance regulation, we have to accept these appropriate channels of how people dispose of drugs so they don't end up in the environment. And then the second thing, and as an example, is, our bread and butter, medicines optimization. One very good example is when I went to do a med reg on, Mrs. Doris, who's 79, and she was on, bone protection medication, chewable calcium is one of them. Then I looked at the table. There's a denture there in a little white pot. And I said, Doris, have you been taking your chewable calcium? Doris went, no, the past 3 months I've been putting them in the bin because I've got knee teeth. I can't chew. So that's an example of medicines waste. Medicines go into the bin and people don't look at the person and think about their medicines that way. So sustainability is not about, waste and recycling your medicines. It is looking at the person and what they need so you don't end up with medicines waste by optimizing their medicines. So that's a reframe of medicines optimization, isn't it? And another example I've put in there is when I 2 summers ago reviewed a patient in a side ward. The patient had heart failure, they're under fluid restrictions. So the UK Climate Change Committee said over 90% of hospital wards are at risk of overheating. We know this, but no one's done anything about it. So my patient said to me, I want to go home. You wouldn't treat a dog like this. She was, alone, hot. We're cooking her alive in a side room. And you might ask me, Jonathan, so what do you want a pharmacy staff to do? They can't fix the hospital infrastructure. No, you can't. But 1 + 1 + 1. If one person goes to the ward manager and say, can we do something about the hospital environment to make it better for patients, better for staff? If somebody went to the union and are reporting unsafe working condition, someone might go to the press and say, we're cooking patients alive in NHS hospital. So collectively, we can make a difference if someone bothered to say something about it. These are things that we overlook every day in our working life that people deemed like, it's not my job. I'm just here for my 9 to 5. And then pharmacy staff, I find, like to put themselves in boxes. This is not a pharmacy box I can fit in. Therefore, I will not do anything about it. So the whole Greener Pharmacy Toolkit, if you look at it, is like a quality improvement toolkit, if you like, to look at how we could improve pharmacy operations, improve medicines use, and by this little sustainability efforts that unite. One thing I really like about sustainability is unite people from all backgrounds. So through working in this field, I've worked with porters, medical gas engineers. I've worked with IT, the estates team, the director of comms. I would never have come across these people in my backyard, in my own organization, had it not been for sustainability. So the workforce efficiency will massively improve. We'll sit together and talk about how we could save money, and improve how we work together. It's just bigger than waste and recycling, Jonathan. I hope I've illustrated that.
Yeah, very, very much so. I think that it goes back to what I was saying earlier. It starts with one person, doesn't it? What can you do about this? Well, there's nothing I can do about the fact that the heating in the hospital is too high necessarily, but there's probably something that you can do as an individual around that, and in terms of our own individual behaviours, but also, and I think you articulated that very well. When we're doing medication reviews, I think a lot of the sustainability challenges around medicines are actually inextricably linked to things like overprescribing and polypharmacy and indeed shared decision making. Because the least sustainable medicine is a medicine that's prescribed, dispensed, and then not taken by the person.
Yep.
Because they didn't really want to take it in the first place, and no one had explained the risks and benefits to them. They hadn't found out what really matters to that individual around this. So that's always been something I see. I see these things being inextricably linked, and I think the Greener Pharmacy Toolkit really helps with that, giving you an idea of where you are in sort of sustainability. But there's always something you can do if you're improving your medicines optimization consultations as well. So I think what I'd say to people is have a look at the Greener Pharmacy Toolkit. We'll put a link in the show notes to this. I think as well, you're doing a webinar, Minna, aren't you? Is it the 29th of May
Yep.
through the RPS? And is that freely available to everyone, or is it just RPS members, or what?
I think it is freely available to everyone. And the toolkit on the RPS website itself is also freely available to everyone, not just members of the RPS. So it's kind of intended that way. So everyone can have a go and see what they can make of it. And we're also accepting feedback. If there's things to improve, we're constantly looking to improve the toolkit. So yeah, feel free to get in touch with the RPS team and suggest improvement if it doesn't work for your pharmacy or your team. Would love to know how we could do better.
Thank you for that, Minna. Excellent. So in terms of take-home messages for people then, what would you say the 3 things pharmacy teams can do about this? And then maybe what 3 things we can do as individuals?
So pharmacy teams, I'd say, this is, I don't know if this is a me thing, but I've always challenged the status quo. If something doesn't make sense, review it, speak up, ask for permission and forgiveness later if something absolutely doesn't make sense. And number 2, remind ourselves what good looks like. And I've said in midst of systems pressure, funding cuts, people are just a bit lost. So what does good patient care and looking after our staff looks like? Be open to innovation and changes if someone suggests that. Number 3 is try and think about sustainability in everyday practice in terms of when you're reviewing your latest policy changes, updating your SOPs, and what you can link in with, because you might bring on board people that not necessarily interested in pharmacy or medicines, but they're interested in sustainability. You might get an extra pair of hands to help with the agenda item from top down or bottom up. As for individuals, whether you like it or not, it affects us all. So I'd say don't be ignorant of the subject. Get curious, read up about it. And it's not, I think there's also the misconception that, oh, we need to suddenly all become vegans. Let's switch all your petrol SUV for a green EV. It's not that. It doesn't mean you can't fly anymore. It's every individual, like you say, Jonathan, starting doing a little bit. And be curious about what other people are, why are they doing this, and what does it mean overall in our system that we live in, we thrive in. Number 2, learn how to speak the green language for a change. So today I've got a Telegram message from one of my colleagues down south who says that none of the leaders care about sustainability. I'm so frustrated. So you don't start a sustainability agenda with higher ups with green subject. You start with, well, do you want to know how I can save you 25k in a year? Do you know how I can create a band 5 pharmacy technician post by doing this sustainability QIPP project? So if you're speaking to a finance director, your ICB execs is trying to cut to look at how their funding spend and optimize it, you start with your finance language rather than a sustainability language. So yeah, learn how to speak the green language, if you like, to who you're speaking to. And number 3, no one's too little to make a difference. Respond to petition surveys if there's any going around. So I've had the opportunity to speak to MPs last year, and I always lobby my local council or local communities. So I've been to a couple of protests as well, speaking to the general public that I'll never have come across if I hadn't gone to. And believe that you can make a difference and connect with your local community, because collectively we can all drive change and see the future we want to live in. Sounds very cliche.
No, I think that's really good. I mean, thanks very much for that. I think the thing I'm taking out of that is it's about your own individual habits. So have a look at what you're doing. Is there anything you can do to make it a little bit more sustainable? Because if everyone did that, then actually that would make a massive difference. It might not feel like you're making a difference as an individual, but you are. And especially if you do it as a collective. I know my habits around this have changed demonstrably over the last 10 years in terms of what I recycle, what I buy, how often I use my car, and also within medicines as well. I've seen lots of really, really good projects, like you mentioned, within medicines teams, where they've just had a look to see what they're doing around sustainability. And I think the Greener Pharmacy Toolkit really helps just give that picture of where you are in the overall scheme of things in terms of sustainability. So thanks very much for joining me, Minna. It's been a fantastic conversation, as it always is with you. But yeah, thanks very much for listening.
Thank you for having me.